I'm delighted to be here as someone that lives in Campbelltown. My commute this morning to work was 6 minutes, much better than schlepping into Pyrmont. So I'm really excited for the discussion we're about to have, and I also want to add my acknowledgement to the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're meeting, and thank Anthony for the intro about lyrebirds. I really enjoyed that. And I think this morning when Paul Scully was talking about Gregory Hills and the school that's just opened, I started thinking about my experience at high school. My first day of Year 7 was on a brand new school with a construction site for a school playground. It was in a growth area of Sydney. We walked through a cow paddock to get to a park because there were no sports facilities. And so I'm really excited now as a resident of Southwest Sydney to see that transformation happen here. And so on the topic of livability, I'm really excited to talk to our panel about this. It means different things to different people. Ewa, what makes where you live livable, and how is that valued by policymakers?
Interesting question. Livability, I think, means different things to different people. I think it's actually quite sad that we aim to create livable cities, because that's what cities should be. But for me, livability is that freedom to move in a space and in an area and feel safe and feel happy and feel I belong there. So a lot of placemaking elements, being an urban planner, that I value in there. But that sense of I'm welcome here means it's livable.
Yeah, fabulous. And we've heard a lot of focus today on fit for purpose and affordable housing as Sydney grows, and the many people and organisations working together to make that happen. It's a challenge for public authorities, I think we can agree, to get the timing right on delivery, not just on the housing but the infrastructure around it, and incorporate the things that make people feel welcome. So Ozge, how do you ensure that the homes that you're delivering integrate seamlessly into existing communities? And could you share some of your thinking on sustainability and how you integrate that into what you're delivering?
Yeah, our modular houses a little bit different than what people think when you think a modular house. We turn any architectural design into modular houses. So it doesn't, globally, we are in 8 countries and we don't do cookie cutter houses. We don't have model A, model B. We can integrate anything to our construction. We can build up to 90% in the factory, reducing the waste, and any good design can be included to these structures. And it doesn't have to be homes. Modular construction, we are building hotels, resorts, shopping centers, convention centers, so anything can be turned into modular construction, and we can make all spaces basically more sustainable and more, we can use better materials basically and make it more livable and better for well-being and health.
What does that sustainability look like? Can you give us some examples?
So sustainability looks like better, it starts with better design. So you can use, for example, better ventilation, or you can use more sustainable products or reflective materials to keep the heat out. Those kind of things can be integrated into any modular construction to make it better. And I'm also a biophilic designer, yes. And also in the board of Biophilic Cities. So I would love to include some biophilic design and make it more, for residents, I would love to make it more productivity, to increase the productivity, creativity, health, well-being of people. It can all be included in our designs, and that makes a better design.
Thank you. And Anthony, pumped hydro, not typically on people's top lists of livability, but maybe it's because they're not aware of what pumped hydro is and why it's excellent. How do you bring the community on that journey from an energy perspective?
Yeah, so we've been working on this pumped hydro project for the last 3 years. We just announced it to the public in March, and we were a bit fearful of what will happen in social media and so forth when all of the the anti-renewable crazies come out. And but we did the work. We engaged with a lot of people in the local area early. We engaged with the traditional owners, and we worked closely with Water New South Wales to have early conversations before any public announcements. And then we provided a lot of information into the public domain, and the kinds of comments that the really painful comments that came back from social media were things like, "Wow, this is a really interesting idea," and I think that's Paul here, who runs our strategic engagement program, did a lot of work to plan this out. But I think if you put information into the public responds and appreciates that. And so I guess from our perspective, the kinds of reasons that pumped hydro here is a good idea. Is for a start, there's a big scar on the landscape now. If you look at at a map of Lake Burragarang, sort of on the east side of that, through the sort of state forest, there's a big orange spot, or half orange, half black, which is the old coal washery. The orange bit is where the coal dust has been scrubbed away back to the old Sydney sandstone. The black bit is the rehab still to go. It's quite hard to restore forest onto this area, but to be able to repurpose that to deliver more power than Vales Point, which is this big coal generator, very old and inefficient coal generator at Lake Macquarie, is a pretty good reuse of that. Of that site, and it's also gives a alternative source of employment for the skills that used to exist, that still exist in the coal industry, and extends that certain, I guess, contracting industries for the coal industry for another 20 years, because we're going to be spending when construction starts, we start with 2 years of earthworks where 50 trucks is driving down, filling up, moving that dirt somewhere else. Much like in the coal industry. So it's I think it's there's continuity for communities, there's continuity for companies, but I think there's also a visibility for the community on where the reliability of power is going to come from after plants such as Vales Point close, which is a very topical in New South Wales at the moment.
My maths has never been my strongest subject. That's why I did an arts degree and I write. But we heard earlier today that Western Sydney is going to grow by 400,000 people by 2041. And your slide said that the Western Sydney pumped hydro could support 50,000 homes. Have you solved the problem? And if not, what are the challenges you're expecting to face?
We might have missed off a zero there. I think it's 500,000 homes. So
Sorry.
We've solved the problem.
Solved the problem. Oh, sorry. Are you expecting any challenges in delivery?
Oh, look, it's a hard project. It's probably about a third as hard as Snowy 2.0, which is what we expect it to cost, a third of the amount proportionally. But there's complexity there. Our three top issues are how do we connect to the grid? We could connect to the existing grid, which is good but not ideal, or we could try to connect to the future grid. There's a lot of transmission upgrades that are being planned by our grid companies and by the market operator. It's quite challenging for one prospective project to try to pair in with another prospective project, which is this question of the coordination of infrastructure that we've heard from Walker earlier today. So the more that we can understand at what point plans become commitments and start to bring those other people's plans into our plans, that's probably number one. Coordinating with the transformation of the grid. And number two is just what you get in digging tunnels. You need to do the work to understand what's beneath the ground, and we know a fair bit of what's beneath the ground because it has been a well mined coal area, but we'll discover a lot more as we dig more little boreholes over the next year and two. Yeah.
Thank you. And what kind of benefits can green infrastructure bring to these major projects?
So I was hoping green infrastructure would come up, obviously. I think a conversation about housing and infrastructure cannot be complete without thinking about green infrastructure. And sorry for everybody here that does not fully believe on green infrastructure. I do feel I've got the backing of previous panelists that said communities are asking for environment. There's a lot of research that backs up why we need to be investing in green infrastructure. But I do think part of our solution, maybe not the only solution, but part of the solution is to turn to nature in cities. I know you will back this one too. Green infrastructure can bring a new way of how we think about infrastructure and the benefits for communities, but it's also a future way of ensuring our resilient and sustainable cities. So while housing is the crucial issue to address, we cannot be building houses that will not be sustainable in future. So we might be ticking a box in the short term, but we've got an opportunity to do something great and to do it right. And it's maybe a challenge for everybody out there, but how can we do it in an environmentally friendly way? Green infrastructure has got a lot of the solutions. UTS has set up a green infrastructure lab for that purpose, to pilot and to test some of the initiatives to help developers and communities understand these benefits and to make it more mainstream. So, I mean, I can keep you busy with the benefits of green infrastructure, but it ranges from social to environmental to economic benefits. And we really need to urgently get that as part of the discussion when we talk about housing, amongst others.
That feels like a good segue to urban heating, which I know has come up a few times today. And I know through the Dialogues research that during summer it's 10 to 15 degrees hotter out here than it is in the east. Is there low-hanging fruit in terms of things that we can do now to address this? You are?
Yes, we can ask nature to help us.
What does that mean?
I mean, there's a lot of proof about tree planting and the benefits that it has in communities. It's not only the heating, it's the recent flooding and the sport fields that's underwater. So in a way, nature disappeared from our cities, and short-term wins is bring it back. One of the solutions. Yep.
And Ozge, in your work, when you're considering urban heating and designing modular construction, what are the things that you're incorporating into that design process to make places more, I suppose, to mitigate that effect for residents that live there?
Yeah, so overheating is a massive problem, global problem basically, and green infrastructure we have to talk about. Biophilic design is something we have to definitely talk about. So globally, what we see, we are in 8 countries. We work with governments and get the land from government built for them. Governments started talking about biophilic design, basically requesting more sustainable materials, using more sustainable materials, and designing in a way that we are going to prevent future issues, because now we can, like you said, we can solve the housing issues for today, but we will create more issues for futures. So biophilic design basically can increase productivity, increase creativity. People basically heal faster in a biophilic designed spaces. And it is easy to integrate these kind of things in housing and infrastructure while we are building new communities, basically. So for our modular construction, it's by itself already sustainable. We waste zero materials, basically. If we don't use in this project, we use in other projects. But it's also about the quality of the materials, the insulation, the double glazed windows, the reflective roof, and also including green outside. A child who grows up in an environment like that, nicely designed environment like that, is going to have better development, better, fulfill definitely better development for the future. It's not going to be the same as a child who grows up in a, 4 walls, poorly insulated, less heated space. So definitely we need to work on using sustainable materials, better design, and it doesn't have to be costly.
That was going to be my next question. Is it affordable? Like we've heard about the cost.
I know,
of
it's
absolutely
it's absolutely achievable. So what we are trying to do is we work with builders, and we would like to make it more accessible, affordable, these structures. I don't have a magical wand to, unfortunately, create like affordable housing, but it's mentioned earlier, affordable housing has levels. So at low income, we can definitely create sustainable houses. It's possible. We are one-stop shop. So we have the natural stone mine tile factory. We have fittings and furnishings factory, 7 factories working on modular constructions only for our projects. When we are one-stop shop, it creates economies of scale, and when we only supply good quality, sustainable materials, that basically keeps the cost down and also manageable.
So with that, we've had a question come through Slido, and keep them coming through. Marty McFly has asked, there are green stars and gold standards. What sustainable initiatives provide the biggest benefit? I'll ask the whole panel.
Can I just ask one more thing? The biggest problem in terms of cost is not because of sustainability, it's because we don't have the system. So banks at the moment, developers, there are so many developers who would like to do the right thing, but unfortunately, banks do not see the modular construction as traditional construction, and because it's a product, basically, it's really hard to get the loan. So till we get these systems, we are going to help developers for easier loans, easier installments. We also have some ventures, like joint venture projects going on with developers. So we try to do the right thing from our end. Yeah, sorry.
And maybe do you want to talk to the sustainer? Oh,
yes,
the question's
in terms
disappeared.
of the benefits. Look, I think it all comes from the right place. It's trying to be more sustainable. I don't think one is better or give more benefits than the other, but it's a bigger picture thing. It's not only getting the Green Star rating. It's the World Urban Forum, just a fun statistic. The World Urban Forum tells us that 0.3% of urban infrastructure budgets goes toward nature-based solutions. So in the bigger picture, we are not doing enough to create an environment where sustainability can flourish. So while I think it's great that individual buildings are trying or individual developers are trying, we need to think about green infrastructure in a system, in a collective big-scale picture. How do we plan it from start to end? It's not something that our landscape architecture friends come in at the end and make it beautiful and green and now we're all sorted. It's something that it's embedded from the start, how we plan, what materials we use, how we design it, right up to the end, to the benefits, to then every building getting these Green Star, Gold Star ratings.
Anthony, do you have anything to add on that line of questioning?
No, not particular. There's
That's all right. I've got another question for you then.
Well, there's I was just picking one off the screen, if I may.
Fabulous. Go for it.
There's as a question of that sort of attracted my attention of how do we make the Southwest a leader in renewable energy? And I think the way to answer that is to flip the question around: is how do you stop the Southwest becoming a leader in renewable energy? It naturally is. It naturally is because it's where the infrastructure is available for data centres. It's closer to the renewable energy zones than other areas of Sydney. It's very well endowed to be a leader in renewable energy and energy-intensive industries. And I think a simple thing is, we're on track ordinarily to, at the moment now, there's development planning applications for 3 gigawatts of data centres in just this immediate area of Western Sydney. That's the equivalent of 3 Tomago aluminium smelters. And I think there's a lot of people might have a bias and think, oh, an aluminium smelter must have more jobs and growth than a data centre. I don't think that's actually true. If you go into an aluminium smelter, I don't know if anyone's ever visited, I went in there expecting to see all the sparks flying like you do in a steelworks or something, but there's no one there. It's just a blank floor, and the only sign of the production happens underground in these aluminium vats. The only sign of activity is which is a gigawatt of electricity coursing through these aluminium vats. But there is 1,000 jobs around Tomago. It happens outside with all the people repairing the vats and moving the materials in and moving the materials out. And it's much the same for data centres, that you go into a data centre and it's with a bit of a slosh of water going through things. So there might not seem to be much activity happening there, but that's supporting now, 50,000 coders working in the back offices of banks in Western Sydney using those data centres to make programs. It's a whole set of trades to move these computers in and out to build the electricity infrastructure. So they're actually high-skilled jobs that come with data centres, and it's the kind of high-skilled jobs that Southwest Sydney, Greater Western Sydney will naturally attract, unless we have poor planning of infrastructure, unless we start to disincentivize people from building rooftops on their homes. And so I think it's good to reflect that some things are going in a natural course that are positive. Just let's not get in the way of that. Yeah.
Fantastic. So infrastructure, as we all know in this room, is about people and about communities and the lives that are transformed through the work being delivered and the assets that are there. So with that in mind, how can we extract the most benefit for communities from these projects, from housing, beyond what gets built, and I guess shifting our minds to the communities around that and the way people will experience place?
It's not about, the building and the structure, isn't it? We are building the future. We are building how, we are deciding how people will live there. So it's about building communities. And to do this right, we need to focus on sustainability. We need to create the right future for people who will live here in this environment, focus on people's well-being, and to do that, basically, it's not easy. I work with developers, and unfortunately, the cost is the biggest issue. When you're building 300 houses in this big, massive land, no one comes to you and say, money is not an issue. Build it sustainable, do the right thing. This is not going to happen. So we need to work together, partnerships with government, councils, and developers. We have to, put our resources together and build a better place, basically.
Are there places elsewhere globally that we could be looking to for best practice?
Well, you ask me dangerous questions. I come from South Africa, so I think Australia is pretty good in terms of livability and how the setup is working. That's why I'm partly scared, because if we do not keep it the way that it currently is and protect the nature that we have, we might not be the top livable cities in 10 years, right? Africa is a really great example of resilience, right? Without having any money. They turn to things like alternative construction methods and houses and no electricity, or, they're quite sustainable. So there's ways to do things differently. I particularly like the Netherlands for how it's not about the big houses or having all the luxuries in-house, but about if you go outside of your door, you've got this great community space. They live outdoors, even though it's sunshine one day.
No such thing as bad weather, yes. Just bad clothes.
Yeah. So, they cycle everywhere, right? Not because that's just the culture. They've created this culture where you live outdoors, you need the minimum. I think there's good things we can learn from that. It's not about the comfort in things, it's about adapting to your environment. But I do think Australia's got a lot of things going for Australia. It's our job to make sure it remains that way.
Thank you. And
you're so nice, Jo. I have to say. So nice. Yes, Australia is doing great. trying, but for example, modular construction, it's traditional construction all around the world now, but in Australia, we are still, seeing modular construction as innovation. And we have been doing this for 40 years globally, and I'm still trying to convince that, any architectural building can be turned into modular systems. So I think Australia can do so much better compared to developed countries. Those other countries who joined, for example, biophilic cities, applying these principles. We still have we have just one village in Australia who joined the biophilic cities.
Where is that, out of interest?
I don't even know. It's
Something like Thredbo.
Yes, that's right, yeah. So just one small city, and there is so much more we can do, to be honest.
I'm sorry, I'm chipping in. We often get this question, like, why is this? Why are we campaigning for green infrastructure where South Africa had a plan in 2006, I think, and I mean, it's not new. It's not new. But I think it's because Australia had a really good point of departure, and nature is a part of cities here, like it's not in other places in the world. But if we don't attend to it, it will not be this way in 10 years, maybe not even in 5 years. So the decisions that we are making today in terms of the housing crisis, yes, it is crucial, we need to fix it, but we also need to think about what's that ripple effect.
Yeah. I heed your warning. And Anthony, I've got lots of questions coming up about community batteries, and I wanted to ask you, I guess, community participation in the energy transition is a major theme, but there's a challenge for people who don't necessarily own their homes to put on, say, rooftop solar. How has Zen Energy thought about making the energy transition more equitable? And if you can squeeze in an answer that talks to community batteries, that's come through Slido, that'd be awesome too.
Okay. So
two separate things, but...
we are involved in community batteries. Someone's asked said that they'd like to integrate one in their project. I could suggest that they talk to Andrew, red hair here, at the end of the forum and can give you a few points. I think it's, the paperwork is required to get Commonwealth funding for a community battery, but like everyone in this room does paperwork. I think you need to convince the Commonwealth agency that this community battery is desirable, i.e. people want it, and it's feasible, i.e. there's track record in the group of people building it, that they have the capability to deliver it. I think that desirable question is really the hardest one, and that is, how does a community battery actually serve the community? It's one thing to build a battery in the middle of a shopping centre, great. Does that deliver visual or any other benefits to households? Not necessarily. It does. I don't mind the look of batteries.
I have a bird's nest underneath mine at the moment.
Yeah, there
I
we are.
do something about that.
But yeah, they're not everyone's aesthetic taste. A big battery is just a big container.
Solar panel.
There's, I think the problem we have here is that we have an electricity system where the generators are separated from transmission, which is separated from retail. That's the nature of the Australian market. If we went back 50 years, Campbelltown Council was its own electricity company and could integrate a community battery and deliver the benefits of that through to ratepayers. That's no longer the case in the structure that we have today. But I think there are ways that we can think about that different companies are exploring, which are things like, okay, if a council is responsible for delivering a community battery, can they collaborate with a retail business to make a low-cost renewable electricity offer available to households in that particular area? I think that's possible for it to work really well. Ideally, you have the Endeavour Energy and a council and a retailer working together to make this as efficient as possible. That's something that this industry it's hard to do in this industry because you have different regulated spaces, and it's not easy to cross those boundaries. But if it's desirable, if people want cheap power, then how they exercise that power is to vote for the government that has a plan to deliver that cheap power. And so I think if you have a 5-year time frame on these things, it is possible to turn community batteries into the main power plant that's used to supply firm power to homes in that area.
And just getting through some of these questions coming through on Slido, we've got from Buzz Lightyear, I'm loving these names. North Wilton has embedded large water bodies and 50% tree canopy to help address urban heat. What other initiatives do you suggest for climate resilience? Open to the panel.
So yes, definitely building trees and
Building or planting?
taking good care of what we already have is also another option. And also, I think, in terms of housing, it starts in our own backyard. So we can come up with, designs that's just gonna make the house, more livable or, better for well-being, more connected to nature. And that's basically my suggestion for all housing.
My little winch would be to have better control after a development application has been approved to make sure that we not afterwards then dig up our grass and put in a pool, for instance. I do think what we approve in the DAs and what's actually there is a mismatch. It means we've got a lot less greenery throughout our neighbourhoods than I think we plan to have, which means there's just a bigger, again, ripple effect. That's why our sporting fields look the way it looked the last couple of weekends. That's why heat will be a problem. So I agree, everybody's got the responsibility to start at home, but also, again, we need more investment in nature in our cities. It's not a one tree or a one building fix-it kind of thing. It's we need this bigger vision to say we will get this right from start to end.
So on-time delivery of infrastructure is something we take very seriously. So this is the last question. I'm only going to ask each of you to answer it. But we're on the cusp of a massive opportunity here in Western Sydney. What's your hope for your legacy for people living here in 2050? And second part of the question, what help do you need from the people in this room to achieve that? So I'll start with you, Anthony, and work backwards.
Mine would be free and sustainable air conditioning available to all. What does that need? It means everyone mucking in together to deliver the energy transition efficiently.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, mine would be to have more trees, to have less air conditioning needs. No, honestly, I do think to have a city that's covered with nature and green spaces where kids can play and communities can be healthy. And to bring it back to the first question you asked me, where people can live and be happy and feel connected. And the answer to that is the environment we create.
I would love to see here model sustainable and biophilic rural area, urban area. And I need these houses to be built because we're in crisis. I need these houses to be built really fast so people will have places to live. But at the same time, these houses, I want them to be sustainable, nicely designed, not really, just to, tick boxes and, not for the next election achievement and focus on sustainability. And to achieve that, I need the councils to join the biophilic cities principles. I need the government to come up with better, easier, laws and regulations to make the modular housing a little bit more easier to build. I need the developers to come and talk to me. Whatever we can do, we will help. I need, I need anyone who is designing, from interior designers to the, designers building the cities, basically I need everyone to focus on the sustainability side of it. Otherwise, we can build a bigger issue for ourselves.
Thank you. And Brett, I hope that has met your task of solving today's problems with a minute to spare. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help thank the panel with me, and I'll hand you back over to Adam.